Hello, welcome to Aquascape Pool's virtual pool school. Thank you so much for joining us, and hope you guys are having a great day, and we'll try to make this quick for you tonight. Jeff's going to share some great tips and points on the equipment maintenance, and then Holly's going to follow right behind with some chemical talk and helping you keep the pool chemistry nice and balanced as the upcoming swimming season is right on us.
All right, well, as Antonio said, my name is Jeff, and I'm the service tech here at Aquascape. And we do thank you for joining us in these unusual circumstances. But I hope tonight to give you a little bit of information on taking care of your equipment and what to do spring. And we're going to touch just a little bit on fall and winter, just so we can post a video that covers both things. So we'll go ahead and get started. So first of all, going into spring and summer, a lot of people know that in winter time they are going to have leaves and debris in the fall coming in, but also you want to check your baskets pretty much daily or every other day in the spring. We get a lot of blooms and things blown off the trees, a lot of buds, storms happen, blow stuff into the pool. So you're going to want to check all your baskets. So you start at the pool with a skimmer, and you're going to have your skimmer baskets. Most of you are familiar with these inside. So you're going to take out your skimmer baskets. You're going to clean those out. Well, this one's stuck inside, so we'll show you that. So inside there's your basket. You're going to pull it out, and you're going to clean that out, put it back in, and you're done there. Now, it's a good idea. Most of the time, what I'll do is I'll go to service mode on your system. So if you have an easy touch system like this, you'll just hit the mode button right there, and you'll turn it to service mode. If you have the new IntelliCenter, what you do is you go to your settings, then you hit service mode, and then you hit the service button, and it's going to turn the system off into service. Now, when you're done, you just go back to auto and arrow back out, and you're finished. So that's how you shut the new IntelliCenter down. So you're going to do that, go into service mode, clean your skimmers. If you have an in-floor system, you will have a leaf canister similar, not similar, exactly like this, right in front of your pump. This lid's going to come off, and you're going to have your basket inside here that you're going to clean out. Now, it's important, each thing you open up, each lid, anything you open up is going to have an O-ring in it. Okay, so it's important that you get that O-ring back seated in place. Make sure it doesn't fall out on you. It's also good to use this magic lube. Every so often you want to lube these, especially after wintertime. You want to make sure these are staying lubed up. It helps seal and it helps protect the O-rings. So that is your leaf canister. Now, a lot of times people have trouble with these things. They'll see that when the pump shuts off, this air will release and it will squirt some water out. That's not a big issue, but when you tighten it up, you can take a little rubber mallet and tap it just a little bit more, and it should help seal that up just a little bit better. If you don't mind taking that, Holly. So over to the pump, if you have an in-floor system, you're not going to get too much debris in this because your leaf canister that I just showed you is going to catch most of it. But your pump also has a basket like that we need to check and clean. Also has an O-ring that we're going to have to take care of. Make sure it's seated and make sure it's properly lubed. That's how we take care of the basket in the pump. All right, some of you may have a salt pool with a salt cell generator like this one, or you might have a chlorine feeder like this one right here. So when you go to clean your salt cell, you can get one of these that it's an IntelliChlor cleaning, a little cleaning cap. So what it does is it threads on to the end of your salt cell, like so. So your salt cell's plumbed in line like this. You're going to turn the system off. You're going to make sure you shut your system down, and this will have a cable going over to your control panel. You want to take that cable off. After you shut the breaker off, you want to make sure you shut this thing down so the panel's shut down. So there's no power to this. So you're going to undo the power to it. You're going to screw in this cap, and then you're going to set it down, and you're going to pour your acid in and let it sit about 30 minutes in there. Make sure you have gloves and stuff for working with the acid. Fill that up, let it sit for 30 minutes. Dump the acid out into something to get rid of it. And then you're going to take your cap off. reinstall the other union and install it back in line. And that's all there is to that. Okay, so on your inline chlorinator. So with these, your chlorine tabs are going to fit right in here. Again, there's your O-ring inside there. Be sure that that's still there when you take that off. You have a control dial right here from 0 to 5. All right. So when you go to add chlorine tablets, you can do one or two things. You can go to service mode, shut the pool down. You can also dial that down to 0 and water won't come up on you. You're going to insert your chlorine tabs, drop them down in there. After that's done, you're going to start the system back up. Let the pump start. Dial that back up until you see water start to come up into this canister. Once it gets to the top, then go ahead and put your lid on and thread it on. If you don't, if you have the system shut off, water drains out of this. You go and put the cap back on. Now we have an airlock in here. The water passes through and it can't force that air out of here, so the water doesn't come up into the chlorine tablets and eat them and feed them to the pool. So your pool is going without chlorine. Time to time, we've been seeing this quite a bit lately, is that people haven't been doing that. They haven't been getting chlorine in their pool. I'll go out and open this up and there's no water in there. Once I open it up, then the water will start to come out. I'll just put this back on like so. But again, you can do that by going to 0, and then that'll shut the water off to it as well. If you just ever want to check, open it up and check. But be sure you let the water come back up before you open it. Real quick, while I'm holding this, before I get rid of it, come winter time, one thing people don't want, they're not really using the chlorine in the winter, so they'll just turn that dial to 0 like that. But what that does is it stops water from flowing through. So a lot of times if we have some freezes, I see these things crack down here. So you want to go ahead and at least leave it around 1 or 2 to let water keep flowing through it so we don't get these things broken and cracked in the winter. There you go, Holly. Thank you. All right, moving on to our filters. So inside here, as you can see in the cutaway, we have your cartridges, and this is what's cleaning your pool, the dirt and debris and stuff. So you always, you're going to service mode, you're going to shut it down, you're going to open this relief valve like that. It goes up and down, that closes, and that opens, all right? And so once you do that, then you have a 7/8 socket. 7/8 is the size that fits it. I even see people get a drill, a cordless drill, and that takes it off real fast as well, so that's not a bad idea. I'm not going to go through the whole process right now, taking it apart, but you will loosen it up. These springs and all these things will come off right here, this nut and springs and washers. Those will come off. This will pop off. Sometimes this gets sucked down, so you might want to take a screwdriver or these big channel locks like this and get in there and pop that out. Also, by the way, since I just picked these up, these are great. These are a great tool to have. If your unions like this or on your pump get too tight, these are always good to have around. These great big channel locks, you can get them at Home Depot or Lowe's, and they will save you a lot of headache. So you're going to open that up. We've got the air all out of here. Now we're just going to wiggle this tank top and pull it off. That's going to expose your filters. Right in here you have a little, looks like a little hand with 4 fingers. You're going to pull that off, pull that out of there, and then you can lift your cartridges out and clean them. So what we see a lot, if you have an in-floor cleaning system, or like your heater's not firing or your salt cell says low flow, so you start checking things from the pool back in. You go out to the skimmers, make sure the skimmers are clean, come to your leaf canister, make sure that's clean, check your basket in your pump, make sure that's clean. If all those are and you're still not getting proper water flow, you're probably having filter issues. Your gauge will say clean filters when it gets around 30. The issue with it sometimes though is that, well, sometimes these gauges go out and don't read right. And also if you have a variable speed pump like this that has different speeds and flows on it, one thing can happen is it can be going in a very slow speed. And so we're not getting a very good reading right here. So people will look at this and think, oh, I don't need to clean my filters. It's not reading very much pressure. Well, that's because the pump's not running at a very high speed. When that pump cranks up to its high speed to clean, then this is going to go up if the filters are dirty. And so we want to make sure we're not getting a false reading there by looking at the gauge when the pump is in just a low pool cleaning mode as opposed to the floor cleaning speed. So those are 2 different things. The other thing, so when we have our heaters not firing, or it fires for a little bit and stops, our salt cell is saying low flow, probably with the heater, 70% of the time, a heater on and off or not firing is water flow. The salt cell, if it says low flow, it's 90% of the time it's water flow, unless the switch has gone bad in there, but most of the time it's water flow. Or if you don't feel like you're getting enough pressure into the pool, my heads aren't pumping up, anything with the M4 system, 95% of the time of the heads, your M4 system, if they're not coming up and functioning right, it's water flow issue. Now, I hear this quite a bit, is that people will tell me, I just cleaned my filters a day or two ago, and I put them back in, and my M4 system's not working right. I don't have much water flow, but my filters are clean. But what happens is inside these tiny fins back up in there, you might have went and cleaned them out real good just with water, or maybe you sprayed a little filter magic in there. But deep inside these fins, you might get them looking clean from dirt, but there will still be a buildup inside there of minerals or maybe calcium that you can't see with the naked eye. So even you clean those filters, you put them right back in there, those cartridges, and you're still not getting water flow. Well, an easy way to test for that, before you call us on that, is literally just leave these cartridges out. If that happens, open the top of your tank, take the filters out, put your tank back on without these cartridges in there, run the system without. If heater starts firing, you get a flow light that's good on your salt cell, and your inflow system starts working good, you got good water flow, we know that's the culprit. That's the easy way to check. If that's the first thing, I don't have water flow, check all those items, pull these out and run it without. And if you still have an issue, then yes, there's something else going on, give us a call. We'll be glad to help you. But Holly has here one of these flossers, filter flossers they're called. They work really good for cleaning these things. Put your hose, attach it right there, open this up. It shoots a fine, direct line right in there, and it gets in between these fins here, and it cleans it real well. So these are good to have. You don't want to use a power washer on these things. They're too powerful. It will destroy them. It will tear them up, so we don't want to do that. But if you find that, yes, we ran the system without the cartridges in there, and so now we know when they're in there, there's a problem. So it might be time to just get some new ones, take those out that are giving you problems. So get filter magic, soak them real good, put them in a trash can, soak them overnight really well, then come back and wash them out really good, because probably something's still blocking the system in here. And then as you go to put everything back on, these cartridges will seat back down here. There's a little ring where they sit. They just sit down over that. You sit them all down, all four of them down in there. You take your little spider here, push it down. You might have to tap it down into the filters, and then you're going to go ahead and put your tank lid back on. You're going to pull this band through, put your washer and nuts back on with the spring, and just start tightening it back up. As you tighten, and it tells you this on your filter band, it tells you on the filter, as you tighten, you want to get your mallet or something to tap, a little hammer to tap this as you're tightening, and that's going to make sure this band secures. As you're tightening this up, the tighter you get, it's going to start to squawk and make like a turkey noise on you, and that's okay. People panic and they don't like, they think they're breaking something. Don't worry about it. Just keep tightening. You'll know it'll start to tighten up. This will be about a 1/4 inch gap or so when it's tight, and then you're ready to fire it back up. When you turn the pumps back on, leave this in the open position. Leave your relief valve open. Let the air all purge out of there. Once it does, it'll start to shoot water out of there. The second it does, just crank it back down like that, and you'll stop the water from going out. Also, Holly, you want to hand me those gloves right there? These gloves are really good winter and summer. In the winter, it helps when you're getting in those skimmer baskets, help keep your hands warm. If you just started your pool up, probably within 3 weeks or so, it's going to get all the plaster dust, it's going to get dirty, it's going to need to be cleaned pretty quick. After that, you're going to see spring and fall a little bit more, maybe every couple of months, but generally on average, you're going to see about every few months, but that varies on, again, where you live. If you have a lot of trees, you have a lot of debris, how much are people swimming, how much are you using your pool. So really you'll just kind of get a feel for your pool, and it might change for different people, but normally just a few times throughout the summer, and then again once you start the pool. You want to go ahead and check those pool water levels daily. When you start to swim, or if you have waterfalls going, evaporation really picks up. Some of you have a sprinkler system tapped into a sprinkler zone. You can just kind of monitor that if you need to add a few more minutes on that, a little bit longer to add some water to compensate for that as we get hotter. But do check those water levels daily, and checking those skimmer baskets. I keep harping on that because if we start getting a lot of air in here and these pumps start cavitating and working hard, the longevity of that pump's going to go way down. So the better you keep water flowing into that pump, the better it's going to be. Water level gets too low, starts sucking in air through the skimmer, the pump starts to cavitate, sucking in air. You don't want that happening. So just do a good job of maintaining that, making sure those water levels are where they're supposed to be. Okay, so let's touch base real quick on fall and winter. We talked about leaves, removing those, but if we start to get to where we have freezing temperatures, we have different plugs and things that I'm going to show you where to pull in case power ever shuts down. Some of you may have a backup generator, that's great, but if you lose power and it's going to freeze for the next day or two, then we want to be sure we protect all of our equipment. So starting with the pump over here, our cameraman Adam Daniel is doing his job over there. So he's going to show you that. There's your plugs right there. All right, so you're going to let the water just drain out. Once that water's drained out, take that lid. I always put the plugs down inside the basket so I know where they're at. Leave this open. That allows the air to escape if anything does get trapped in there. So that's taking care of your pump. If you have this little booster pump right here, you're going to have a plug right down here at the bottom, and it's going to unscrew. I would suggest putting all your plugs in the same spot in that same pump basket. Make sure all the water gets out of that, like so. Over here on your filter, you see that, Adam, okay? There's a plug right down here on the bottom. So you're going to undo that plug right there. And just like when we were cleaning this, go ahead and open that relief valve. It's going to let all that water drain out of there and leave that open, and that'll protect your filter. Last but not least, if you have a heater, obviously this isn't your whole heater, but coming out of your heater, it's going to look like this. It's going to have some pipes connected right here where it goes in and out of your heater. But on the bottom, right here, you're going to have a plug right there as well. And so you're going to take that one out, let all the water get out of the heater. So you have pump, filter, heater, maybe a cleaner pump. So those are the items that you want to check and make sure that all the water is drained out of those. And also, people, you know, it takes a hard freeze to freeze these things up. So, you know, a lot of people panic if worried about power going out or something like that. But if it does, just be sure that you take those plugs out. If you leave town, if you're going on vacation or something during the winter, you might have somebody keeping an eye on your pool. You should have a freeze protect on your system. If you have the Easy Touch Intellis Center system, it's going to automatically kick everything on, and it's going to run your system. If you have a pool spa combo, it's going to automatically rotate back and forth with these what we call actuators that are on your valve. So they're going to send water to the pool and to the spa every 15 minutes. So it's going to rotate and do that for you. So as long as it's in freeze protect, you're safe. The pump's going to kick on around 34 degrees, and it's going to run throughout, and it's going to keep the water moving. One thing I would tell you though is we've been getting a lot of freezing rain and ice and sleet these days in the winter. And a lot of times what I've seen is these things go to turn. This is what turns to move the water to the different pipes and plumbing. I've seen ice and sleet, freezing rain, get on these things and freeze up enough that it prevents them from turning. So they just kind of sit there and they can't do anything. If you have a tarp that you can kind of cover, you don't ever want to lay anything close to the back of the pump or directly on this so this valve can't turn. But if you can kind of cover things a little bit, let it drape over, keep that freezing rain from getting on these things, that's going to save you some headaches as far as these things freezing up. Below your panel will be some breakers, or sometimes they put the breaker panel next to it. That you might see a silver box hanging with your breaker panels. Just flip all those breakers off. The power here, power to the pump, just turn all those off. Then when you get your power back on, you're going to go ahead and turn those back on. And also make sure too, once everything's drained out of these pumps, you're going to have to put the plugs back in. You're going to have to fill this back up with water. Fill your leaf canister, fill this back up with water, put your lid on, and then you'll be able to fire the pump back up. Literally, winterize, it takes only about 5 minutes once you get used to where the plugs are, and it's not going to take you very long. But yes, Freeze Protect is only working when you have power to the pump.
I have learned a lot about pools and pool chemistry, so I'm going to talk to you about some different things that need to be done. First of all, I want to let you know that here at the store, we have a retail store, if you didn't know that, where you can get all your supplies, and we do free water testing. So we'll give you a bottle. You do want to bring that water in within an hour of when you pull it from your pool, because otherwise different things, if it sits in your car, especially during the heat of the day, it's going to mess up what is actually in your pool by sitting in the car. So we'll print off a list of different things. It's going to look like this, and we're going to tell you what kinds of things that you're going to be looking for and things that you need to maintain in your pool. First of all, alkalinity and pH are going to be your top items that you're going to be really pressed for. If those aren't in balance, kind of everything else can get out of whack. And so you want to have those balanced, and then you're going to treat for other things. So if you have algae in your pool, you want to make sure your pH and your alkalinity are balanced. Make sure you have chlorine in your pool. And from there, we can take more steps to get other things to help with your problems from there. But those things are important to have balanced first. So you're also going to be looking at, we have several different things, but chlorine is also one that you're going to be paying close attention to. So that is something that needs to be in your pool, and we do have a product that is called UV Shield. It's also called Stabilizer. So that protects the chlorine in your pool. So you are going to use that. You want that to run about 50 parts per million in your pool. So if it gets really high, we're probably going to ask you to drop a little water out and bring that down, because it can inhibit some of the benefits of your other things in your pool. So you want to be sure to keep that down. We do have chlorine tabs that are called high-tech chlorine tabs that have less cyanuric acid in them, which is your Stabilizer UV Shield. So that can help. So one of these, let's see, this one's the UV Shield right here. So that is, UV Shield is what protects your chlorine from being eaten away by the sun immediately. If you just have chlorine in your pool and you don't have Stabilizer in your pool, you're going to go through a lot of chlorine tabs, and you don't need to. Shock, I'm going to be getting to Shock. Shock has Stabilizer in it. Some of them do. So that is going to be adding. Your chlorine tabs have Stabilizer in it, so that adds. So that is why we recommend the high-tech tabs, because it has less Stabilizer. It also is a chlorine tab that gets eaten a little slower, so you're not only using less tabs, but you're also decreasing the amount of Stabilizer going into your pool. So I wanted to talk just a little bit about pH. I mentioned pH before, that you want to keep that in. Around here, we don't have a huge problem with your pH getting too low. It does happen every once in a while, but usually your pH is going to be probably a little too high. We find that you're probably going to be adding a gallon or two of acid to your pool almost weekly, every other week. You just want to make sure that that's staying balanced, because like I said, if that's not in balance, a lot of other things are going to kind of go a little crazy, and you want to keep that really on point. So if your pH does get too high, you're going to get more calcium buildup, which nobody wants to scrub calcium off your tile. Other chemicals don't work. You're going to get kind of a dull and cloudy look to your pool. Your eyes can burn and your skin can itch a little bit. So those things are indications that your pH is getting too high. Also, your pH, if it gets too low, it can mess with the plaster, so it'll start to pit and erode your plaster. It can corrode your mechanics and your pool equipment, some of those things, your heaters and stuff like that. If you have metal in your pool on the steps or anything, if you have ladders in your pool, if it gets too low, it can start doing things to that. So staining can happen. So you don't want to, like I said, you want to keep your pH right around, we like to have it at about 7.2. Our range goes from 7.2 to 7.6. If you can keep it closer to 7.2, things should be looking pretty good with your pool. So just wanted to go over some of those pH things. Shock is something that you're going to be using probably, especially in the summer, on a weekly to every other week basis, depending on how much your pool is getting used. And we have 3 different kinds of shock here at the pool or store. And so we have 3 kinds of shock that do a little bit different thing, but all of them do one thing, and it's the purpose of shocking your pool. And that is to convert used up chlorine back to usable chlorine. So yes, it keeps your algae away. A lot of people think that shocking your pool is for algae, and that's not what it's for. When you are swimming and you have lots of kids in your pool, lots of people in your pool, what happens is the chlorine attacks the contaminants in your pool. So if you've got hair gel in, if you've got sunscreen on, if you have kids in the pool, know what I mean? Then what happens is that chlorine attacks those and it gets used up. And so then you have a lot of chlorine in your pool that is used up. It's still chlorine in your pool, but it doesn't do anything. And what shock does, it converts the used up chlorine and makes it free again. It's called free chlorine. So when you shock your pool, it makes those used up chlorines, which are called chloramines, and it makes them active again. So even though you constantly are feeding chlorine in your pool, if it's all used up chlorine, it's not doing anybody any good. So that's what shock does. And we have one shock that is kind of a standard around here. It's called quick shock. It does have it converts your chlorine. It is a potassium based, so it's not adding any kind of calcium to your pool. And then we have another one called Power Magic, forgot the name of it there for a second, which does add calcium to your pool. You ask why you would want a whole lot of calcium in your pool. Well, and we prescribe different shocks for different situations when you get results on your pool. Calcium is important in your pool because your pool water wants to be a certain hardness. And so that hardness is, on your results sheet, it's going to be between 200 and 400. We want to keep it there because if it's too low, it can eventually pull calcium from your plaster, and we don't want to do that. So we do want to bring up the calcium to a certain point, and then you don't want to get it too high because then you don't want it attaching to the walls of your pool and the floor and to the rocks and stuff like that. So there's a balance. So the quick shock does not add calcium, but if you are a little bit low, we'll have you use a shock that has a calcium base. It's still shocking your pool, and it adds a little bit of calcium. We have a third kind of shock called shock and swim, which does not add any chlorine to your pool at all. The other two are chlorine based. This one has no chlorine. It's called a super oxidizer and a sanitizer, and it kills a different kind of bacteria. Still converts used up chlorine to usable chlorine, and then it allows you to swim pretty quickly. You can shock your pool quickly and be swimming within 30 minutes. But again, it attacks a different kind of bacteria and stuff like that. So if your chlorine in your pool is too high, if you've got your chlorinator set too high and it's pumping up too much chlorine, then we're going to suggest that you still shock your pool because you may need to convert those chloramines over, but we don't want to add more chlorine. So those are the 3 different things. We have these sheets available at the store too if you want to take a little education home with you if you can't remember which ones to use at what time. So let's see. I did want to talk about, Jeff talked about the filters, and we do have a Filter Magic that a lot of people, I know there's a lot of people out there that have pools, and cleaning those filters takes a while, probably 15 to 20 minutes on each filter to get them cleaned. So what a lot of people do is buy a second set of filters and a garbage can, and you can just fill that garbage can up and put about half a bottle of Filter Magic in that, and then you can just change your filters into clean filters right away when you're doing that. Then you don't have downtime on your pool and wonder, how am I going to get this done in this amount of time? So you can just switch them out, and then you can clean your filters when you have time. Algae is another one of those little things that always gets in our way. Shock, like I said earlier, can help with algae. It is not the thing that you necessarily want to go to the first time you see algae. There may be something else going on, and so algae needs 3 things to live. It needs something to eat, something to breathe, and sunshine. So obviously we don't want to get rid of our sunshine in the summertime. We want to be out by our pool. You do want to get rid of the breathing source, and you do want to get rid of the phosphates, which is what it eats. So when you bring your water in and you tell us it's kind of looking a little green, looking a little funky, we can test for phosphates here at the store and let you know that if you have them, how we can get rid of them. We have phosphate removers. So that's a real good way to get rid of that source and knock out the phosphates and knock out the algae. Not necessarily shocking your pool, that you could go through a lot of shock if you did that. So, and it doesn't get to the real problem. So, we also have algicides. If you have you don't have a whole lot going on, but you see a little bit, we have algicides that will help to prevent algae as well here at the store. We have another product called Supreme Plus that I wanted to show you. It has the same color lid, which confuses people. So when you're in your garage and wondering if you have one thing, make sure you look at the actual label, because these 2 products actually have the same color lid. Everything else has a different color lid. So, but Supreme Plus is a product that is optional, but we highly recommend it for our customers. It does a lot of different things. It helps to balance a lot of your pool chemicals, so you're going to use less chemicals. They say, the manufacturer says you can use up to 30% less of the regular chemicals that you're putting in your pool if you can keep your pool balanced and use the Supreme Plus. I said a little bit ago that algae also needs a breathing source, and that's carbon dioxide. You can get rid of the carbon dioxide with Supreme Plus. It's a borate product, so it's made of borate. It's a softening product. It helps your skin feel really soft, but one of the benefits of it also is that it binds up that carbon dioxide so that algae cannot breathe. And so if you've gotten rid of the phosphates that they eat and you get rid of the breathing source that they breathe, then you should not have algae. Another nice thing that it does is it puts a little kind of bubble around your calcium that is floating around in your pool. I told you you need calcium in your pool. You don't want too much and you don't want it to stick to the sides. So what it does is it kind of puts a little bubble around the calcium molecules in your pool, and it helps it to bounce off the sides of the pool, your pool equipment. If you have a salt cell, you definitely want to make sure that you are cleaning your salt cell, like Jeff told you, with the acid, and it eats up that calcium that builds up on the salt cell things inside. Your salt cell won't work. So with the Supreme Plus, it helps that from sticking. So even the rocks on your waterfalls, it's not going to stick to them as much. You know, it's going to kind of bounce off and leave your rocks more natural the way you want them to look. We have so many more products here at the store that we have, like this is one of my favorite. I actually took one to my hairdresser today because she couldn't believe that she had missed out on this. She's been fishing out frogs out of her skimmer for weeks, and so took her one of these. These are fabulous. They're a different skimmer basket, as you can tell. Instead of having that little bar across the bottom and you having to, Jeff told you to use the gloves. I recommend the gloves as well. But you never know what's actually down in there. So this has a long tower here and it's vented. So when he was talking about all the leaves getting packed in here, this does help a little bit with that because air can get up through above the water. So you are getting at least a little bit of suction and stuff as well. But then you can grab this top instead if you've got critters like he was saying in there. I have had turtles, I have had rabbits, snakes, tarantulas, frogs, everything in my pool. So we live out in the country. So this is a great thing to have. Most people buy two for both their skimmers. We do have this smart scoop that has different measurements on it all the way around it for all your different chemicals. All of our products have a little bit different weight on them. So if you need 1 pound of sodium bicarbonate, it's going to be a different weight than the UV shield. So they put all those on here. What 1 pound of one thing is, maybe 1 pound up here of something else. So kind of handy, and then you can use it for all of your products. We have test kits. I know that when we have a pool that we're building, we leave them with their pole and their net and their brush. We have all of those products here as well, so we'd love to have you come. I would wait probably at least an hour. That brings up a good point too when you're adding chemicals. There's certain chemicals you don't want to add at the same time, and there's definitely a certain order that you want. We like to put chemicals in the order, kind of alphabetical order. So we are going to treat for alkalinity first, and chlorine, and then pH. And when you treat for pH and you're trying to bring down the pH, you're using acid. And when you're putting chlorine in the pool and shock, which is chlorine, those two do not mix. And so you want to at least put 2 hours between if you can. And sometimes I would recommend if you need to do one thing one day and then do the acid the second day, because you don't want those chemicals reacting with each other. Another thing you want to do is make sure when you're putting acid in that you can dilute your acid in, if you've got a 5-gallon bucket, maybe 3.5 gallons of water. Always put the water in first. Never ever put acid in the bucket and add water to it because it can cause a huge reaction. So always put water in first and then your acid, about 1 gallon of acid to that 2.5 gallons, and then distribute around the edges of your pool. But in order to swim, I would recommend after you shock, you definitely want to wait probably an hour after you shock the pool. If you've got a big group over and you want to swim the next day, after everybody leaves, shock it, and then you'll be ready to go in the morning. Acid drops your alkalinity and your pH. So if you are low on alkalinity, what we would do is treat for alkalinity first, and we would treat with sodium bicarbonate to raise your alkalinity, and we might add a little extra. Our results page tells you to put so much in, and oftentimes to get it in range, you may only need about half that much. We don't want you to be dumping all kinds of stuff in there and then going overboard the other way. So lots of times we will recommend to put in about half to 2/3 of what our sheet tells you to. If you're going to be raising your alkalinity, we're going to do that first, and we're going to raise it a little high, and that way when 2 to 3 hours later or the next day when you're going to add acid to drop your pH, then they can drop at an equal level. Generally, those two things like to hang out around even with each other. Usually your pH and your alkalinity are kind of about balanced. If one needs to come down, they both need to come down generally.
If you have a waterfall on your pool and you're running it a lot, the agitation to the water, the aeration, will cause the pH to rise. So if you're like, hey, my pH was great, and all of a sudden it's out of whack, just consider that factor. So if you have waterfalls and you're running them several hours a day, just may have to do a little bit more acid during that time frame to help control the pH. If you have an infinity edge, those pools are notorious for having higher pH as well, because there is more of that gas exchange going on with the water spilling over. And also, if you use your hot tub a lot and the air blower is agitating the water, that will also cause the pH to rise. So just quick.
All right. I think we're about done. Like I said, we would love to have your reviews on Google and on our Facebook page. We'd love to hear from you, hear how we're doing, and if you'll give us a good review, I'll give you some filter magic. We do have ledge loungers here at the store that you can get to. We usually just have them shipped to you because they're big, so but it only takes about a week to get them. So we have ledge loungers if you guys are interested in ledge loungers to put on your in your pool. Thank you for joining us, and come and see us at the store. Thanks.